Hello?
Beep, 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 beep. Hello everyone, welcome to the Court of the Edijester. How the devil are you? Right, this is important. Today, the Women's Rights Network will have already, or will be releasing, and I know it's actually up now already because you're getting this about 2 o'clock, so it's already up, information in regard to legal documentation and legal advice that has been received by them and completed by Akua Reindorf. Now, you may remember the name Akua Reindorf, who was involved in writing a great piece on universities, free speech, the problems with gender, etc., etc. So this is a well-known and well-respected lawyer / KC, King's Counsel now, isn't it? Not Queen's Counsel anymore. And the Women's Rights Network have been lucky enough to get the attention of Akua, who has written for them an important piece in relation to Manchester City Council and what the City Council has done in terms of the ridiculous trans and gender nonsense that we're all living through. So I thought it would be interesting, A, for you to engage with some of the stuff that they've got, which I'll put all the links as usual will be in the Dubris downstairs, but also I thought it would be interesting for us to engage with exactly what it was that happened that day in the council chamber when they passed this ridiculous motion. Because what happened is extremely revealing. So I'm going to take you through some of what happened on that day. We've got some footage from the council, so I urge you to get a cup of coffee, cup of tea, whatever it is you want to get, and have a sit down and have a listen as I witter on about this. And then we'll talk at the end about what exactly this information from the Women's Rights Network means and how you can access it, okay? So before we start, main players, right? Main players, Manchester City Council, which is completely infected with gender nonsense. They passed a motion saying that they would support, trans people and non-binary people. The exact wording of the motion is rather peculiar, and again, in the links you can go and have a read of it. It's utterly deranged as far as I am concerned, but it's what happened in the council chamber after. So let's take a look first of all at what exactly does this ridiculous pledge that they've all signed contain, and what is it that's problematic about it? So let's do that first. Let's have a look and see. Well, you can see there it says that the council therefore resolved to, this is what happened in the council chamber, they affirm trans men are men. So they affirm homophobia. Let's start there, shall we? We affirm homophobia. Okay, so trans men are men and trans women are women. They're not. So you've got to remember this, and non-binary people are non-binary and trans rights are human rights. I mean, you've got to remember from the beginning, this entire thing is predicated on lies. That's the first thing. So we've got a council chamber. I know, it's surreal, but bear with me. A council chamber that are predicating something on lies. Not only are they lies, we know now that it is a danger to children, women and gay people generally. So number one is to affirm, as I've said. Number two, facilitate and strongly encourage all councillors to attend relevant training to learn of the challenges faced by trans people. This to me would be some kind of struggle session, right? Remember that towards the end of this. I think it's been a struggle session, and I'll show you why I think it has. They're going to write to the Secretary of State for Health and Adult Social Care, this was in 2022, provide the funding and resources necessary to increase the capacity of and improve access to trans and non-binary health care. There's no such thing. Including expanding gender identity services and reducing waiting times. No. Develop strategies to recruit more clinicians to become gender identity specialists. How can you be a clinician who's a gender identity specialist when gender identity doesn't exist? So this is absolutely insane. They want gender identity specialists across all relevant disciplines and train staff across the NHS on issues affecting trans and non-binary people. So this is very much about give us the money. We want to train your people and teach them how to be allies and all the usual stuff that comes with it. Commit to effectively and regularly consulting trans and non-binary people and groups in the design and delivery of trans and non-binary healthcare. No, right? We're not giving you a seat at the table anymore. So what they've said, in other words, is here, you will capitulate to what we want or else. Number four, continue working to promote and extend pride in practice. Now, pride in practice has been a real infection across some GPs and across the NHS. This is delivered with the LGBT Foundation, who are central to this, who have a service called the Indigo Service. Indigo, as in Indigo Children. They're still looking for them. The Indigo Service. And this will be for all healthcare providers in Manchester to make sure that our hospitals, GPs and pharmacies are accessible for trans and non-binary people. They are accessible for trans and non-binary. The hell's wrong with you? They're no different to the rest of us. Trans and non-binary. They'll conduct an audit of council services to ensure they are accessible as possible to trans and non-binary people. What exactly is that accessibility that they need? To be pandered to make sure you use your pronouns. You'll see more of this in a minute, so, keep watching. Look into what we can do as a council, as an employer, to further support those who identify as trans and non-binary. Yet no. Refresh our Gay Village review in light of COVID and publish it by the end of 2022, setting up a working group that is representative of our whole community and looks to forward its recommendations. So they've included in there the concept of the Gay Village, which is what it is, but a Gay Village for God knows how long, that I've been a part of for the last 20 odd years. And they're doing that in order to force team us with the gender loons. And declare that the city is a welcoming, tolerant and progressive city that will not let hate divide our communities. So if you don't agree with this, if you don't get on board with this, then it's hate. That's what they're saying. That's what they're saying, it's hate. So who have we got that's involved in this? Well, the key players are John Connor Lyons, as you can see there, and then the others that follow Bev, etc., which I've got a few pictures coming up now. You can see these people. These are the folk that are involved in this. And I've got the footage from the council meeting that we're now going to take a look at. But before we do, become a warrior teacher. We've got November. We've got two weeks, I think, 2 and a bit weeks before it starts. So please do come and join us. It'd be great to see you. If not, if you like to support my work, please do subscribe, buy me a coffee, join my Substack. It's on offer at the moment, whatever it may be. Okay, so now what we'll do is, let's just take a look at John Connor Lyons introducing this ridiculous pledge.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm proposing this motion at the start of LGBT History Month, a month where we look back on the challenges the LGBTQ plus community has faced, but also celebrate the victories we've won in our fight for equality. Manchester has a proud history of fighting for equality and indeed standing with the LGBTQ plus community. From our councillors leading the Section 28 protests in the 1980s to planning to build the UK's first, purpose-built LGBT extra care facility in Whalley Range. But this motion today isn't about our history. It's about how this city continues to stand up for equality when some of its most marginalised citizens are faced with adversity. Over 40% of trans people in the UK have been physically threatened and attacked, and almost half have attempted to take their own life. It would be easy to say that this doesn't happen in our city, it happens elsewhere. But just last year, a gang randomly beat a transgender woman and her friends on our streets here in Manchester. Random acts of violence is not the only challenge trans people face. Trans people are constantly told they aren't who they say they are and that they don't deserve equality. Trans people also face barriers with their healthcare, with over 55% of trans people reporting that they've been told by their GP that they don't know enough about trans-related issues and therefore the GP simply cannot provide help or support. Can you imagine what that must feel like? To be attacked physically on the streets where you live, to be questioned constantly about who you are, and to be told by your GP that you can't access healthcare because they don't know enough. By voting for this motion today, we as a city will be declaring that trans men are men, trans women are women, non-binary people are non-binary, and trans rights are human rights. We will be calling for greater healthcare provision from the government whilst doing what we can locally in promoting and extending the Pride in Practice provision, which helps to train GPs and pharmacists here in Manchester on trans healthcare needs. We will also commit to conduct a review of our own services to ensure they are as accessible as possible to trans and non-binary people, because we ourselves must recognise that we can and must do better. Comrades, you can help us by continuing our history of standing up for the LGBTQ plus community today by backing this motion. Lord Mayor, thank you.
As you will notice during that speech, that introductory speech for this ridiculous pledge, the forced teaming of gay people with the LGBTQ, he changes it within the first 30, 40 seconds. Bearing in mind that Councillor Lyons here is 24. Right, we got equal rights when he was 10. It's absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. So in fact, all he is actually talking about is trans and gender ideology and gender identity, and talking about making sure that it's entrenched into the council, which of course they did, which led to the Women's Rights Network asking Akua Reindorf to give them some legal advice. Let's keep going, right? Let's see what Jade has to say, all right? Because this is interesting as well. Let me know what you spot in the comments, because this is important to be able to see this and understand exactly what it is.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Good morning, Council, and thank you, Councillor Lyons, for bringing this important motion forward and for the opportunity to second it. I'm speaking today as an LGBT woman and an ally of transgender people. I have good friends who have completed or are in the process of transitioning, and I have witnessed firsthand the difficulty they're faced in everyday life, whether that is engaging in political activity, accessing housing, or accessing essential healthcare. Heartbreakingly, the statistics back this up. According to Stonewall's most recent report, Trans in Britain, 1 in 8 trans people, or 12%, have been physically attacked by a customer or colleague in the last 12 months at work. More than half of trans people have had to hide their identity at work for fear of discrimination, and 25% of trans people have experienced homelessness. At the last Manchester Pride, I was in one of the notoriously long nightclub toilet queues, and the young person in front of me came out in hysterical tears because they were shouted and abused out of both the male and female toilets. It really struck me that I took for granted something as basic as being able to use the toilet without facing a fundamental attack on my identity. This is why I'm really pleased to see in the motion that it commits to a refresh of the Gay Village Review and with a representative working group of the whole LGBT+ community. Powerful voices in politics and the media often propagate the levels of discrimination and hate directed towards trans people by denying them their own identity or claiming that this is an attack on the struggle for women's rights. But it's plain to see that to live one's life as a transgender woman brings its own set of structural inequalities in addition to the structural inequality faced by all women, and that this is a struggle for basic human rights and equality for all. So whilst the LGBTQ+ community has been let down by the government and their disappointing reforms to the Gender Recognition Act, this motion targets the key ways in which trans people face discrimination and inequality and demonstrates that Manchester is willing and able to take clear, practical steps to protect transgender rights, promote equality and stand shoulder to shoulder with the entire LGBTQ+ community in their struggle. Lord Mayor, I second this motion.
That is quite extraordinary, isn't it? Absolutely extraordinary. Right, first off, I don't believe it. Right, I don't believe it. Okay? I don't believe half of what she's saying. Stats, those stats, are they right? You tell me in the comments. You know as well as I do what the real situation is. Are those stats correct? And then there was somebody who was shouted at in both the male and female toilets while in a queue. Right, so they came out the queue and went directly in the other one, or did they come out the queue, get upset and then tell you? Or they been in one and then went in the other because they got kicked out of the other? Which was it? I don't believe your story. I don't believe it. And you'll notice here what they do is, my friend, she's throwing women, gay people and children under the bus for one friend who was probably in a toilet they didn't belong in. Right? There is no human right to pretend that you're something you're not and then get everybody else to play along with it. I don't know what they were thinking when they passed this. Well, that's the problem, isn't it? They weren't thinking at all. What else did you spot? Again, let me know on Twitter. Let me know wherever you come across this. What do you think in terms of that performance? And then the forced teaming. The LGBTQ. I stand with the LGBTQ in their struggles. We haven't got any struggles. Gay men and women haven't got any struggles. The only struggle we've got is against the likes of you and Connor Lyons and the TQ+. And she stands up at the beginning and says, as an LGBTQ woman. Well, you can't be a woman in the LGBTQ, you absolute nitwit. They erase your existence. It's absolutely insane, isn't it? But let's continue on. Who we got next?
I would like to thank Councillor Lyons for putting this motion forward. I am deeply worried about the rise of transphobia in the UK. I have seen the impact it has had on people. One of my best friends is trans, and I am deeply angered by seeing the barriers they have to face to be who they are. I applaud large parts of the motion, and I am very glad to work constructively across party lines on this issue. I truly hope that we can work together to ensure that Manchester is a beacon of hope for LGBTIQA+ rights at a time in which that hope is very much needed. No one party has all the answers on this, and all parties have their problems. We can only tackle transphobia if we acknowledge it where we find it and tackle it head on. I would like to add a few points that are missing from the motion. Another key issue for trans and non-binary people is access to employment and dignity at work. A Stonewall report states that half of trans and non-binary people, 51% and 50% respectively, have hidden or disguised the fact that they are LGBT. A 2018 report found that a third of employers would be less likely to employ a person who is trans. Based on this, I would encourage this council to look into how we can tackle work-based discrimination. One suggestion is that we ensure that we only commission services from third parties that can demonstrate that they are committed to ensuring equal protections to trans and non-binary people. This motion reflects existing Green Party policy, and I am pleased to support it.
Good grief, there's Rob there weighing in from the Greens, who of course, when it comes to gender, have the perfect and immaculate record. Just ask Shahir. I mean, it's insane. This is the Greens, right? So it reflects Greens policy that, you know, we're gonna throw women and men and gay people, women and gay men and lesbians under the bus. Yep. And this is all before Cass, though, right? So that's the important thing. But they've done nothing since Cass came out. Nothing. They've no intention of changing this, which is why the Women's Rights Network have had to get this legal advice from Makua, right? But that legal advice is going to help you too, because what they've got is a breakdown of it, is what the main points are, what it is that you can use against your councils, and it's time that Manchester Council was held to account, not least of all, for the fact that they were ignoring me completely on the safeguarding issues at the vigil this year at Manchester Pride. So, but it continues. I mean, it just goes on. So let's keep going, shall we? Because, you know, we've got nothing else to do, have you? Who's next?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to Councillor Lyons and Councillor Doswell for bringing forward this motion this morning, and for the comments from Councillor Nunney. It's probably the first time I've ever said thank you to Councillor Lyons for his comments in the chamber or in a committee meeting. The one thing that I'm slightly disappointed about is that this motion hasn't been put forward over as a cross-party motion, because there is no dissent amongst the political parties represented on this council, and I think it would have been a more effective message to the people of Manchester and further afield if it had been done on a cross-party basis. So can I just suggest, as a way of showing the unanimous support for this motion, that we actually have, rather than having a vote by acclamation, that we actually have a named vote this morning to show that all councillors in Manchester support this motion, and will put trans rights, will support trans rights in Manchester for everybody. Thank you.
This may be my favourite. It's so bonkers. So what he's saying is, we want to do a name vote so that anybody who didn't vote with us, we can identify. That's what that's about, by the way, just in case you didn't know. And then says at the end, we want trans rights in Manchester for everybody. What? These are the legally elected representatives for Manchester, en masse in a council meeting, succumbing to absolute lunacy on a grand scale, because it's all predicated on a lie. Right now, I know that there are councillors who didn't agree with any of it, right? Who didn't agree with any of it. I know, because I've spoken to them, right? But they daren't speak up. I'd like to hear from more councillors in Manchester who've been bullied by this cabal into supporting a child-harming, fetishistic cult. I really would. So, you know, what do you make of what he said there? A little bit of, you know, if you don't do what we say, we're going to get your name, we're going to make a list. Is that what's going on? It's as bad as Conor Lyons, isn't it? Comrades! Comrades! Da 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 da. Utterly insane. But scary, because these are the elected representatives of Manchester. And they are in a chamber, an elected chamber, in a democracy, talking about a lie. Offering support to a lie. A homophobic, misogynistic lie. Let's keep going.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And thank you to Councillor Lyons for bringing this incredibly important motion to Council. I'm pleased to speak in support. My pronouns, as on this badge here, are he and him, which you might think that's not very controversial, but it sometimes feels these days that even stating your pronouns can feel like a radical act in the middle of a culture war, which is what the Tories love nothing more than, in order to distract from their lies and incompetence, especially at the moment. And as a gay man who grew up in the era of Section 28 and the height of the AIDS pandemic, I know that all too well. And trans and non-binary people have been the target of a culture war for some time now. And it creates a very unpleasant, toxic environment. I see it online. Particularly, you have prominent transphobes with lots of followers who instigate attacks on anyone who calls them out, and then claims they're the ones who are being bullied and silenced and marginalised, usually in newspaper columns and interviews in news and television, and where trans and non-binary people themselves rarely get a right of reply. We've heard about the increase in transphobic hate crime. ILGA Europe, which examines countries' records in LGBT rights, has an equality index. We used to be in the UK at the top of that equality index. We've now dropped to number 10, and that's because of the increasing levels of transphobic hatred that we're seeing in society and in this country. And last week, of course, we saw a number of prominent LGBTQ+ charities distance themselves from the Equality and Human Rights Commission because the latter had produced a report and set of recommendations which seemed to be suggesting there should be further delay on Gender Recognition Act reform, which has been in consultation already for years, and even that there should be exceptions around conversion therapy, which is clear that we have a serious problem here. And we are better than this, and we've heard we are better than this in Manchester Labour. We've always had the backs of the LGBTQ+ community, and we need to have their backs again. And we need to focus discussions on what really matters, making sure services are accessible and inclusive from healthcare to housing, making sure our city will always welcome trans and non-binary people, and being allies by amplifying progressive voices on trans and non-binary rights and by calling out anti-trans bigotry when we see and hear it. As John Connor said, we're at the beginning of LGBT+ History Month. The theme this year is "The Arc is Long," and that comes from the Martin Luther King quote, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." One day, historians will look back and hopefully see that we in Manchester were on that arc and part of making society better for trans and non-binary people. I urge you all to support this motion. Thank you.
Oh gosh, this wouldn't think it can't get any worse. We have a pronoun pillock, as I call him. He's probably a lovely chap, but absolute insanity there, as you can see, in quoting the LGBTQ and ILGA. ILGA are a bunch of lunatics. I don't know what the hell he's quoting them for. And the usual nonsense about the Labour Party has always had the LGBT people. No, you haven't. Harold Wilson voted against decriminalisation. You're talking about? You were dragged screaming and kicking, and only when you thought that you could get your communist feet under the table did you bother. That's the truth of the matter. Right, so stop lying. There's lies in there as well. Same as quoting Martin Luther King, "For the love of God, the moral arc of the universe." Doesn't seem to stop you hurting gay children and women and everybody else that's caught up with your trans and non-binary nonsense. It's absolutely astonishing that this is a representative who's been voted in. The people of Manchester don't know, I think. They don't know what it is that they've let themselves in for with these people. But let's continue on. Let's continue on again, shall we?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Manchester stands at its pedestal to say the bedrock to modern society is to have diversity. And the principle of human rights is that freedom, respect, equality, dignity, and autonomy for individuals are given. We have legislations, almost over 100 pieces of equality legislation in the United Kingdom. And yet, my colleagues have said about the Stonewall finding, about the trans and the LGBT communities finding discrimination in all walks of life. In supporting this motion, I'd like to say that Manchester can do better. We are the knowledge capital of the world. We have so many institutions here which attract people around the world. Let's be an exemplar in terms of putting things in practice, and all forms of phobias is not acceptable in Manchester. I support the motion. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Well, isn't that a load of neoliberal hogwash? Absolute hogwash. It's just nonsense. They're talking nonsense. They really are. And this one is talking particular nonsense. about human rights and autonomy, right? Okay, you don't have the autonomy to be something you're not. You don't have the autonomy to pretend that you're a woman when you're a man, or a man when you're a woman. You don't have the autonomy to invade the spaces of gay people or women. You don't have the autonomy to do that. And I think you find that Akua Reindorf has shown that you don't. And they've done nothing since Cass. And what does he mean, all forms of phobias? Oh yeah, I wonder what the other form of phobia it is that he wants to bring in. This will be the Labour's vile plan to make Islamophobia a thing in terms of legislation. Any religion that cannot take criticism doesn't deserve to exist. Full stop. Right? And Islam as a religion is strong enough to take criticism, the same as the Catholic religion would or the Christian religion would. But if they get what they want, they'll have it in law. And before you know it, you've got a blasphemy law. There's more to this than meets the eye, folks, and you've got to see it. I hope you do. Let me know in the comments what you think and whether or not, am I correct? Am I an idiot? What am I? I'll see you later after we've watched now the High Priest herself,
Councillor
Bev Craig.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. And I just wanted to briefly, on behalf of the Executive, welcome this motion. I think what we've seen today by the number of people speaking, and I think the power to the testimonies that people have given in the Chamber today, is that Manchester's strong history of standing up for the most vulnerable and fighting against inequality remains intact. And I'm proud of people in the Chamber today for bringing forward this motion, and we as an Executive will work to make sure that everything that we do in this city is building a city for everyone, that no one is left behind and that no area of discrimination or injustice can remain. So thank you to the mover and the seconder, and thank you to everyone that's spoken today. I think it's been a really powerful discussion, and one that will certainly be rooted in action as we move forward.
Oh, and there you have it, that powerful discussion they've just had. It's absolutely laughable. If it wouldn't be for the fact that these people believe all this. They're absolutely committed zealots, whether you like it or whether you don't, and I don't like it. Bev Craig has ignored me on safeguarding. She's had multiple emails from me and other people about what the hell is going on. They've done nothing about Cass. She's the leader of the council, and she's an absolute disgrace. Absolute disgrace. I don't know what they think they're playing at. I honestly don't know. But there it is, right in front of you, okay? Right in front of you. So how did they end the meeting? That's the next thing. We will make sure nobody's left behind. Unless, of course, you're gay, lesbian, a woman, a man, or anybody who doesn't think in the groupthink of Comrade Bev Craig and her friends. All right, that's how it works. But let's see what happened when they took the vote.
On this, we can go to that. Okay, I will now put the motion to the vote again. The council will vote on this by acclamation. All those in favour say aye. Aye. All those against the motion say no. Are there any abstentions? Thank you. I declare the motion to be carried.
Well, there you have it, folks. Right, so we've now got the legal advice from Akua, which you can find on all the links that I've got for you. Please do explore. It's a very important piece of work, and the Women's Rights Network have done an extraordinary job on this, an extraordinary job. They must be able to bring the council to account, and you must be able to do the same wherever you are. Don't give up, all right? We've got to keep going. These people are deranged. It's that simple. They're deranged by a lie predicated on something that has taken over most of our beloved institutions and turned them into mush. Because from the very beginning of this entire silly debate that they've just had, you have to believe that people can change sex, that men are women and women are men, and that everybody has a gender identity that is slipped into the flesh sack that is their body. This is a religious, cult-like behaviour here. But they just don't know that they're part of it. I genuinely don't think they know. I think they're zealots, and I think they believe that they're right. And I think that they won't stop until we make them stop. Now's time. Go and look at everything that WRN have done and look at what they've achieved. And you might want to tweet and say thank you, because it's really something. Okay? I'll see you later. Come be a warrior teacher. Stop fanning about, you lot. I need you. Come on. Otherwise I can't keep going. You know, this is how I make me living. Come and help. I'll see you later. Go and have a great day. Bye-bye.